Hey guys, Professor Benson here, just showing you how to do the progressive uh, calculation student spreadsheet. In this one, you're going to be calculating the compound annual growth rate, which your book usually calls the geometric mean. But normally, as I mentioned over here in this blue box, the geometric mean is more commonly referred to as the compound annual growth rate, or CAGR. That's how you pronounce that, CAGR. Okay, and the reason it's important is that normally when you're doing growth rates, if you're tracking, growth in investment or customers or sales over time, if you just average each year's growth rate, you're going to ignore the effect of compounding. And then when you put in I'll move myself there. When you do the CAGR, it's going to incorporate the growth. It's going to incorporate that compounding. And so I'm going to show you two ways the book presents it. I explain down here why this formula uses n, whereas this one uses n minus 1. So this is like, if n were 2, this would be the square root. In both cases, using this Adidas example, it's going to be a fourth root, and I'll show you how you calculate that in Excel, and I'll show you why that is. So this is an example straight from the book. It says sales for Adidas grew at a rate of, so this is 51.96% in year 1, which is phenomenal, 2.13% in year 2, 4.85% in year 3, and then it declined actually in year 4, declined by a negative 3.87%. So I just copied those down right here, those four. Okay, and then I added 1 to each of them to make it so that I could create a growth rate. Because after, going from this year to this year, because it grew by 2.13%, I need to multiply it by, I'm going to multiply each of them by, so if I look at this one, I'm multiplying it by 1.0213. Okay, now so then it says, well, you're supposed to calculate what is the average growth rate. And if you were to just take the average of all of these, so if I just do average of these four, it's going to say 13.77%. And that's actually overstating things because it's not including this effect of compounding. And just to see that, so if I start out here at 10,000, and then this is just, I multiply it out. So I start at times 0 at 10,000. Okay, and then at the end of year 4, I have 15,643. What is the compound annual growth rate? And there's two ways to do it that I'm going to show you, and then we're going to do it here with this auto insurance data. Okay, so the way the book wants you to do it, and you can do it this way, it works, is to use this lower formula. And if that's not very visible to you, you can go up to your, once I click on it, since that's a screenshot, you just go to Format, and I can choose a different color if you want it in that orange or whatnot, or, sorry, if I'm on it, you could do whatever color you want. These are all changeable if you want the blue. But anyway, that's the original. And so what you would do is you're going to do 1 plus that growth rate. So instead of that 0.5196, the 1.5196. So they want you to multiply it. And so you do this times this times this times that. Okay, and now you take the fourth square root of it because there's 4 of them. So you say it equals that. And the way you do a square root in Excel is you put this caret sign above the 6. So E13, and I'm going to put it in parentheses so that it knows that's how you do a fourth root. Okay. And then I'm going to subtract 1 from it. So it grew at, that's 11.83%, which is what I calculated over here. Okay, so that's using this formula right here. So I just multiplied them, took the nth root, and subtracted 1. Okay. More commonly, the way people do it is what you would do is so before Excel 2016, you would do end value divided by start value. So that's, if I zoom in a little bit here, or make this guy a little bit bigger. X sub n is your ending value. X sub 1 is your starting value. And then you notice here they want you to do n minus 1 periods. And that's because if I look here, those are 5 observations. But the way you normally want to think about it is I start out with 10,000 at time 0, and then I let it compound for 1, 2, 3, 4 periods. But, so if I do end value divided by starting value, I raise that to the 1/4, okay, and that gives me that 1.11. When I subtract 1, I get the 11.83%, okay? And then now in Excel, since Excel 2016 or something, they've used this RRI formula, which is a lot better. And what does RRI even stand for? Returns it's like an IRR. It's the equivalent interest rate, but it's the compound annual growth rate. So what it does, all you have to do is you just say, so you'll notice here, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Well, that doesn't really help us. But the NPER here stands for the number of periods, in this case 4. PV is present value, but that means your starting value. FV is the future value, meaning the ending value. So if you plop in, it's 4 periods and then D7 and D11. So I'll just go ahead and do that. It calculates that 11.8349%, which is exactly what we get here. Okay. But if you Google it, how to calculate the compound annual growth rate in Excel, all of the answers, all of the websites that you see will give you either this one or this one. That's the way they're going to show you how to do it, and I think that's much more common. But if the book asks you or on the quiz, this, it can give you stuff like that. I just want to show you that those are equivalent. Okay, and then down here I explain why, even though this one says take the nth root and this one says the n minus 1th root, in both cases you're going to use 4. It just depends on what you count as period 1, because this one is saying you've got these 4 growth rates, and this one says, well, you have 5 observations, but really to get this 0.5196, you're looking at the growth from the 10,000 to 15,196. So anyway, what I've done now is I use this in my strategy class. If you take that, so one of the cases we do is progressive auto insurance, and progressive auto insurance sort of does, if you're familiar with Moneyball, either the book or the movie, they take a Moneyball approach to insurance. So they do a lot with data analytics. And so then I said, well, let's look at, has it made a difference? So this is the market share. I grabbed it from this website right there. You can see the link. But all I did was I grabbed the market share of the top 10 auto insurance companies for the past 10 years. Well, this one, it goes 2018 back to 2009, and then they jump back to 2000. Okay? So, and then why do we care about the top 5 or the top 10? Well, in strategy or economics, if you're looking at how competitive an industry is, often we care about, are there lots of little firms competing, or is market share concentrated in a few large firms? And it's more competitive for consumers, meaning you get better prices if there's lots of little firms competing with each other, often. Okay, so now this is an image, and it's a little bit backwards. A lot of places do this where they put the most recent year first, and then as you go to the right, people have a hard time, especially in languages where you read from left to right, like English. They have a hard time getting a sense of the growth. So I've typed these all in for you. You're welcome. I didn't make you type them in, and I put them in the correct left to right order. So this 17.05 is that 17.05 there. This is, now notice I have the 2 digits in there. 18.13 is this 18.13 right there. And this 18.31 is the 18.31 from 2015. I'm only showing a single decimal place. You can always add more or reduce more here. That'll be important as we calculate. So the first thing is this is their market share in 2018. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to go equals what's in cell C5 and then take it down. Now, the reason I'm doing that is I want to add a data bar. So I'm going to actually select these, and I'm going to go up here to Home. It's Conditional Formatting and Data Bars, and it's the solid fill. But what we're going to do with it is I'm going to use more rules because I only want to show the bar. I find it easier without the numbers in it. Okay, and this just gives me, this is actually a simple bar chart. It's just in the cell. And the great thing is Excel automatically adjusts it to whatever is the largest. So if all of a sudden if I make this 100 or if I make this 65, that looks like and hit Control Z, or 50, whatever is the biggest one, it sets as 100%, and then everything else is sort of a percentage of that, and that's how it adjusts those bars. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do in column D is add these data bars using Home and then Conditional Formatting and these data bars. Okay, I'll just show over here. So this, like in 2018, this 72.17, that's the top share of these top 10. That's the 72.17 right there. Okay, now that green arrow, this green bar you'll notice here is throwing an error, and the error it's saying is the formula omits adjacent cells that have a number. Doesn't say that, and that's because I'm not including this 2000, the year. And so anytime you have a year as a header, you'll often get that error. Okay, so now to be able to see how much they've grown, because what we're going to see here is that in the last 20 years, the market shares remained relatively stable, but Geico and Progressive have really taken off, right? So in 2000, they both had about 4.7% market share, and in 2018, Geico has 13.44% and Progressive has 10.99%. So Geico has taken the low-cost approach. They don't have any agents. They're all at call centers. You see their little gecko, their advertisements. Progressive has taken, at first they were the only ones. They would offer motorcycle insurance, so that they would take on a little bit riskier. As they've gotten more and more data, what they've done is say, so if you go out to their website, it'll say you can compare our quote with 3 other companies. And what they have found is sometimes people look like they're really safe based on the models that insurance companies normally use, but in fact you are riskier than that. And if that's the case, then what happens is you are not like people say, well, they're so honest that they show that somebody else is cheaper, that Allstate is cheaper. Well, that means Progressive doesn't want you. That means you look safe, but you're probably going to cost them more than Allstate's going to understate your risk, and so they'd rather you go somewhere else. Like they don't want you. And so it's quite an interesting model. This isn't my strategy class. In there we talk about it and how it works. But here all we need to know is we just want to see these growth, calculate the growth rates. So what I'm going to do here again is I'm going to say we're going to do the sparklines. Actually, we're going to pick this first one. I'm going to go to Insert, and we're going to do a line. That's the spark line. And the range that I want, so I'm going to click this box, is I want it to grow right there. And then where do I want it? I want it in N5. Okay. And then I'll just take that down. Then go ahead and you can change the marker color or the spark line color. We'll change it here to this red just because we can. Okay. You'll notice these are all considered kind of a group, so I can't just, in fact, if I hit delete, it won't delete them. The way you delete them is one of 2 ways. One is you right click and you pick the spark lines and you're going to clear the spark line group. Or you're going to go up here in Home all the way over to the right and say clear all. And if they're all selected, we're going to clear all. That'll clear it as well. Okay, so again, I'm going to say Home, or it's on Insert. Insert, believe it or not. We're going to insert a line. The data range is the row. I want it there. Okay, and then I'm going to do, this is the sparkline color. Okay, now the other thing to notice is each of these are considered independent, so they're not on the same scale. So I can look here on the sparklines. Oops. I can click on the axes here. This is what I meant to do. And right now it's set, the default is automatic for each sparkline, meaning for each row, but I could put it for the same for all sparklines, or I could give it like some value that I'm setting. In this case, we're going to let Excel do its magic, but on it you're going to see one thing is it looks like, oh, these guys have really grown, and then you can see that their growth has come largely at the expense of, for example, Allstate here. Now, in this one, we're going to do the 5-year compound annual growth rate, and I'm saying 5-year. We're actually going to use 4 periods, or the n-1 is going to be 4, because we're going to go from 2014, which I've got here in yellow, to 2018. I've hidden column H. Don't worry about it. It's not going to affect anything. But what we're going to do is we're going to say it's equal to the end value divided by the 2014 value. That's our beginning value. Okay, and then if I started with 18.7 in 2014, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 years of growth, or 4 growth rates, essentially what I would have. So that's why we're going to raise it to the power of 1/4. So we're going to do equals that divided by this. Now, I always put these in parentheses just so that Excel will get the order of operations right. And so I raised that whole thing to the power of 1/4. Okay. And then I subtract 1. So this is the formula. End value, beginning value, raised to the 1/4, and then I subtract 1. Okay, and this is my compound annual growth rate from 2014 to 2018. Now, if I've done that correctly, in this column, we're going to do it in column Q here. We're going to do it with this RRI formula, which I've put in this comment. Okay, so we're going to equal RRI. So, and that's the number of periods, which is 4, comma. The present value was the beginning value, which is this 18.7. And the future value is the ending value, which is 17.5. Okay, we've got the same thing. Okay, and then in column R, what I'm going to have you do is we're going to do data bars, but we're going to do what's called win-loss bars. And so we're going to do equals this, just like before. Okay, and then we're going to go to conditional formatting, data bars, more rules, show bar only. Okay, and the nice thing is you can see which ones have grown and which ones have not, and it also puts, anybody who's declined is in red and the growth is in the blue. So you can see that the one who's declined the most here is Nationwide. Nationwide is on your side. That's their commercial. Liberty Mutual has declined, but the big decliners are Nationwide, Farmers Insurance, and State Farm. And since this market is essentially a mature market, it only grows with population growth. Geico and Progressive have grown sort of at the expense of State Farm, Farmers Insurance, and Nationwide. Okay. Now, I always get worried, and I use this all the time. Have I gotten the number of periods correct? Slide this out of the way. And so what I worry about that, and so you're going to actually check it manually, because this is what I always do. So we're going to take the values right here from 2014, and I'm going to paste them right here. So the yellow and the yellow. Now, if we've done this right, I'm going to start with Geico in this one because they're growing. It's a little weird to see a declining rate, but if we've done this correctly, if I do this and have it grow at 5.67%, and Excel's going to take it to 16 decimal places. Then starting at 10.8, I should get this 13.44 in 2018. Okay, so I'm going to say this is equal to 10.8 times 1 plus the growth rate, this 5.67%. Now, I'm going to use this by doing the absolute value, which is the, I'm going to keep hitting F4. I want it to stay in column Q, but I want to be able to move it up and down for each of them. So different rows. So I'm going to have the star be next to, or the dollar sign next to Q, and then leave the 6. And that way, as I slide this to the right, so this one says I'm multiplying 11.4 times 5.67%. This one says I'm multiplying. So each year it's growing, and I'm going to make this guy 2 decimal places. So if I've done this right, this 13.44 should equal that 13.44. Okay? And now because I've got those absolute values, I should just be able to take this down. And now I'm going to do Control C and Control V. It's Command C and Command V on a Mac. Okay? I should have the exact same number here as I do there. And just to make it easier for me to check, what you're going to do is in this column Y, you're going to say equals this, what we calculated manually, minus that, okay, and they should be 0. And then I'm going to have you go over here and highlight it in some grayish color so that I can easily see it. Just makes it faster for me to grade. Okay, now if they're not the same, sorry, if they are not the same, there's 3 things you ought to check. Okay, the first one is the most common mistake is you didn't, like if I just make that Q5, if I get rid of the dollar sign, and now I drag this over to the right, once I get here, I'm multiplying it by the wrong things. Okay, so that is the most common error, is that you're pointing it to the wrong. Is that this always needs to be pointing to this growth rate. Doesn't matter whether you're pointing to the one in column P or the one in column Q, but you have to be pointing to the growth rate. The second one is often people will just type in this number, this 10.8, and this is 10.78 you'll see here, and so that would lead to a difference. So that's why I have you copy and paste it rather than just manually type it. The other one is that you've got the wrong growth rate. Like this is why we're manually checking it. And so if you use the wrong number of periods, for example, you used 5 periods instead of 4, then these numbers will be different. Those are the 3 most common mistakes. That doesn't mean people can't invent new ways that I haven't thought of, but those are the most common mistakes. Okay, and then I'm going to have you do a couple on your own. This is Adidas. These are their actual revenues. I should make these consistent. These are in euros, not dollars, but this is their actual revenue from 2011 to 2015, and this is Google's actual revenue. These are in millions of dollars, so Google made $37.9 billion in 2011 and $74.54 billion in 2015. I'm going to have you calculate the growth rate. Use the RRI formula, but I don't care which way. Make sure you double check your work. But in Excel, or not in Excel, in Canvas, the question I'm going to ask is you're going to calculate that compound annual growth rate without me showing you how to do it. Okay? So with that, that is this assignment. Good luck, and I hope it goes well for you, and I will talk with you soon.